Imagine you're standing at the edge of, I don't know, a new mega project. A massive bridge, a new port, something huge. These are projects with global funding, materials from everywhere, and they're meant to last for decades. What's the one document that governs every single detail? Every payment, every delay, every single dispute?
Well, that document is almost always the FEA Red Book, specifically the 2017 version we're looking at today. When you hear FIDIC Red Book, you should really just think of it as the default operating system for major construction contracts, especially the ones designed by an engineer.
Right, so it's less a simple contract and more of a global framework.
Exactly. It's all about allocating liability and managing risk in a standardized way.
So our mission today is a proper deep dive into the blueprint for that framework. We're going straight into the general conditions, specifically clauses 1 and 2. This is where the contract, sets its own dictionary, its own rules for how you talk to each other.
Yeah.
And it lays out the duties for the two main players,
Yeah.
the employer and the contractor.
And if you can get your head around these first two clauses, you basically understand the entire philosophy of the Red Book. It's the foundation for everything that follows.
Okay, so let's start unpacking this with the language itself. Because in construction law, ambiguity can be absolutely lethal, right? Clause 1.1 defines nearly 90 terms. We don't need all 90, but let's pull out the key relationships.
It starts with the three key figures. First, you have the two parties. That's the employer, the owner, the one paying for it all, and the contractor, the one building it.
Simple enough. But then you have this third person in the room, the engineer. Now, the engineer is appointed by the employer to act on their behalf. That relationship always sounds a bit tricky.
It is. It can seem like a conflict of interest because the engineer is, paid by the employer, but is required to act impartially on certain things.
Like what?
Like assessing claims for more time, for example. It's a real balancing act that's just built into this kind of contract model. The designer is also the referee.
Okay, so if the referee makes a call and one side doesn't like it, where does that fight go?
Straight to the DAAB.
The DAA.
The Dispute Avoidance Adjudication Board. It's SEA8's mandatory first stop for arguments. It's designed to stop disputes before they turn into, full-blown legal battles.
So it's an internal resolution first. Before we move on from the people involved, there's a really critical detail for contractors who team up, right, in a joint venture or JV.
Oh, absolutely. This is a real minefield. If a group of companies forms a JV, the contract is crystal clear. All members are jointly and severally liable.
What does that actually mean on the ground?
It means the employer can legally chase any single member of that JV for the full amount of the debt or obligation, even if that member only had, say, a 5% stake in the project.
Wow, so they can be on the hook for 100% of the problem. That is a huge risk.
It's a total liability trapdoor if you're not prepared for it.
Okay, let's talk about money. There's a distinction here that can completely change how a contractor gets paid. We need to talk about cost versus cost plus profit.
This is probably one of the most important financial definitions. Cost means all the money you reasonably spent, overheads, taxes, all of that. But, and this is the key, it explicitly excludes profit.
So if a clause says you're entitled to your cost, you get your money back, but you make zero margin on that work, that sounds almost like a penalty.
It can feel that way. But if the contract says you get cost plus profit, then you get your expenditure back plus an agreed percentage for profit.
And that percentage is in the contract data somewhere.
It should be. And if someone forgets to fill it in, the contract has a default. It's fixed at 5%, non-negotiable.
5% on a billion-dollar project is a massive swing. Okay, that really drives home why these definitions matter so much. So we've defined the money, now let's define the clock. Time is everything.
And the most important moment in time here is the base date. Now, this isn't the day construction starts. It's a very specific date, 28 days before the final day to submit the tender.
Why that date? What's so special about it?
Because it's the cutoff. It's the benchmark for risk. Anything that happens or any information that comes to light after that date could potentially be considered unforeseeable.
Ah, I see. So anything before that date, the contractor is expected to have known about it and priced it into their bid.
Precisely. It's the line in the sand for who owns unforeseen risks, like, say, discovering unexpected ground conditions.
Got it. And the final time gate is the warranty period, right? The defects notification period.
The DNP, yep. It starts ticking from the date of completion. And if it's not specified, it defaults to 1 year. It's the period where the contractor is still on the hook to come back and fix any defects that pop up.
Okay, that brings us to the rules of engagement. If the definitions are the vocabulary, I guess these protocols are the grammar.
That's a great way to put it. Clause 1.2 is like the lawyer's decoder ring. We know shall means you must, may means you can, but the biggest rule is about agreements.
What about them?
Anytime the contract mentions agree, agreed, or an agreement, it must be recorded in writing to be valid.
So a verbal agreement, a handshake on site?
Means nothing under the contract. If it's not written down, it didn't happen.
That is huge. And that written communication has to follow a strict protocol, doesn't it? The notice protocol in 1.3.
Yes, every formal communication has to be in writing and clearly marked as a notice. You can't just bury it in a long email.
And what about electronic notices? We live in a digital world.
The Red Book handles that, but with a very clever detail. An electronic notice is officially deemed received on the day after it was sent.
The day after.
As long as you didn't get a non-delivery bounce back, it builds in a one-day buffer.
So if I send a critical claim notice at 11:59 p.m. on a Tuesday, the contract says the other party officially got it on Wednesday. That avoids arguments over time zones and server clocks.
Exactly. It's a small detail that prevents huge arguments.
Okay, so communication has to be perfect. But what if the documents themselves are not? These projects have thousands of documents, drawings, specifications, conditions. What if they contradict each other?
Then Clause 1.5 kicks in. It's a fixed priority of documents, a strict hierarchy for which document wins in a fight.
So what's at the very top of the list?
Number one is the contract agreement itself, then the letter of acceptance, and then the letter of tender.
So the most recent high-level agreements.
Right. And things like the drawings and technical specifications are actually way down the list.
Yeah.
So a single sentence in the formal contract agreement can override a detail on a drawing if they conflict.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, let's pivot a little to something really interesting. Intellectual property.
Ah, yes. The project documents. Clause 1.8 says the contractor has to keep a full set of everything, the contract, the drawings, all communications on the site at all times.
And the employer's team can just walk in and look at them.
During normal working hours, yes. It's about transparency and record keeping.
But the real kicker is Clause 1.10. I've heard this called the IP license trap. The contractor keeps the copyright to their designs, but what does the employer get?
The employer gets a non-terminable, transferable, non-exclusive, royalty-free license.
Wow, say that 5 times fast. What does that mean in plain English?
It means the employer gets the keys to the kingdom. They get to use that design forever, for any purpose related to the building.
So 50 years from now, if they want to alter the building or repair it, they don't need to go find the original designer.
Exactly. They can copy, use, and modify those documents for the entire intended life of the project. That includes operating it, maintaining it, repairing it, even demolishing it. The license outlives everyone.
That is an incredibly powerful clause, one that any employer would love and any contractor really needs to understand they are giving away.
It ensures the asset isn't held hostage by the original designer's IP rights down the line.
All right, let's move to our last part. Allocating risk and accountability. This is the what if section. What if the employer or their team drops the ball?
This is where the contract gives the contractor the right to claim for an extension of time, or EOT, and potentially cost plus profit.
And what are the main triggers for that?
There are a few key ones. First, if the engineer is late issuing a necessary drawing or instruction. Second, if the employer fails to give the contractor access to the site on time. You can't build if you can't get on the land.
And the third one is often about permits and red tape.
Yeah, correct. If it's the employer's job to get, say, the main planning permits, and they fail to do so, the contractor is entitled to relief. But there's a big caveat.
Which is?
If the employer's failure was caused by the contractor's own delay, like being late to submit their documents, then the contractor loses their right to claim. It's about mutual accountability.
Of course. You can't cause the problem and then claim for it.
Yeah,
Now, what about the employer's most basic obligation, proving they can actually pay for all this?
Clause 2.4 covers that. The contractor has the right to demand reasonable evidence of the employer's financial arrangements if certain things happen.
So they get to peek at the owner's bank balance. When does it happen?
Obviously, if they're not getting paid. But they can also ask if the employer issues really big variations.
How big is big?
A single change order over 10% of the contract value, or if the total of all changes exceeds 30%. At that point, the contractor can say, hold on, the scope has changed dramatically. I need to see that you have the funds to finish this.
That's a huge protection for the contractor. It forces financial transparency.
Okay, let's wrap this all up with the ultimate safety net, the limitation of liability.
This is clause 1.15. Standard rule is that neither party is liable for what we call consequential loss or damage.
So things like loss of profit, loss of business, that sort of thing.
Exactly. If a contractor is late, they'll pay the pre-agreed delay damages, but they won't be on the hook for, say, the millions in revenue the employer lost because their new factory didn't open on time. It caps the commercial risk.
And the total liability is also capped, usually at the contract price. But there's a line you can cross that voids all of this protection.
The ultimate safety valve, yes. The limitation of liability is never applicable in cases of fraud, gross negligence, deliberate default, or reckless misconduct.
So if you act in bad faith, all bets are off. All bets are off. Your liability becomes unlimited. It's the contract's moral floor. It ensures that while honest mistakes are managed, malicious behavior is completely unprotected.
So, to bring this all together, we've walked through the DNA of the FIDIC Red Book, and it seems it's less about building and more about structuring relationships and risk with almost military precision.
It is. It forces clarity on absolutely everything, from the exact second a notice is received to who owns the intellectual property 50 years from now. It creates a self-governing legal universe for the project.
Right. It tries to solve every fight before it even starts. But that brings us to a really interesting final thought for you to consider. We've seen how this document tries to be this exhaustive tool for preventing conflict, right, by defining every single term and protocol. But in today's world, with projects getting more complex and the demand for speed and agility always increasing, does this drive for absolute definition, a 28-day base date, a one-day notice buffer, does it ultimately speed things up? Or could it sometimes slow down the actual monumental task of building our world's infrastructure?
It's a fundamental tension, isn't it?
Is total legal robustness sometimes the enemy of practical agility on the ground? Is there such a thing as too much definition?
A great question. And we'd encourage you to maybe look into other contract models like design-build contracts and see how they try to strike a different balance between that legal precision and the flexibility you need to innovate on a live project.
If you're interested in the templates, please visit our shop. The link is in the description.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and see next time.